comes up with our members is they're really interested in CDOT's approach to asset management and how you balance mix urban and rural needs and safety, obviously. Anything you'd like to share in that space?
Sure. The challenge of asset management is one that is, we liken it sometimes to filling a bucket with a hole in it, because as soon as you fix a project, something else ends up on the list.
Sure.
And, the way that the feds track us is basically kind of focused on roads and bridges. There's many other asset categories for which we're also responsible, but the kind of compliance metrics are on roads and bridges. Because of the strong enterprise funding for bridges, especially, we've been able to really make a lot of progress there. Though, ironically, one of the challenges with the way the enterprise is structured is that it forces you to invest in the worst bridges and not get ahead of the ones that are about to get bad. So, there's a little bit of a structural challenge of getting enough dollars into the bridges that are still fair before they hit poor, because it's cheaper to fix them often before they get worse. On the road side, one of, again, I think this is probably related to our formula situation. The fact that so many of our roads that are, critically important, freight routes, transportation routes for individuals, et cetera, are not interstates, puts us in a little bit of a funny space with the federal metrics, which focus primarily on interstate pavement. And, one of the things that we've really done in the 10-year plan is try and get outside of that model a little bit to make sure that the significant secondary arterials that are not interstates are getting their due as well. And we don't necessarily get full credit with it for the feds, but the amount of rural pavement work that we've done in the last few years has been phenomenal. I mean, we're somewhere for the last 3 years, we've been fixing, upper 500s to 600 miles a year, of which about a third of that is mileage that's on the 10-year plan versus the asset management program. And those tend to be bigger capital projects. So what that means is you're getting, essentially a 50% increase in miles touched, but also those projects are more substantial often and include things like passing lanes and shoulders. So you're really getting safety components that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And, I think the focus on the rural pavement program is one of the signatures of the 10-year plan, and we're very proud to see those results coming online.
That's great. Tell me a little bit about what you see as visionary efforts that are underway with Colorado's transportation system.
Sure. And, I think one of our guiding philosophies is that vision comes in a lot of different flavors. For us, the rural pavement program is as much a part of the vision as big projects like Floyd Hill or I-25 North. And, I think we've put some emphasis on making sure that talking in categories about how you get these smaller projects, which means so much to rural parts of our state, elevated in profile is something we've had to work very hard to do, and we're very proud of. I think as we think about adding options to the system and how you kind of manage, a growing population for good reasons, but have it not turn into one person, two cars, adding more transit options and thinking about bus rapid transit corridors in the Denver area where they're so badly needed and on our 10-year plan provides us an opportunity to think about, not just fixing the things we have, but also what giving people more options for the future looks like in places where we're going from small towns to small cities to big cities, and everything in between.
Sure. One thing that comes to mind for me, and I know Senate Bill 260 really focused in this area, was the climate-related components of transportation. And there are substantial changes that are happening in that space, be it weather or or otherwise. Could you share what you see as the next most important work that CDOT will be doing in that climate-related space and really reducing the carbon footprint related to travel?
Sure. It's a need that we can't get around given what we're dealing with. An anecdote that I like to share is that the week we proposed the pollution reduction planning standards that were required in Senate Bill 260 was the week that Glenwood Canyon had the mudslide. I mean, the kind of juxtaposition between those two things being the news events for CDOT that week was, jarring in a way that I think you have to confront dealing with the system that we are, right? We're coming off of several years of, historic extreme events, whether it's fires, mudslides, the relationship between them, floods, everything in between. And, the imperative to both protect the infrastructure we have and invest in things that will help us reduce emissions per capita, is a place where we don't have a lot of time to waste. I think that the policy that we put in place with the Transportation Commission last year, is at the kind of forefront of efforts like it in the country, both in terms of it being meaningful and technical and thought through, but also in terms of how many people participated in the process, right? Love it or hate it, everybody had a seat at the table for discussing how it would play out. And, in general, it's working, right? It has not stopped us from building projects where they're on the 10-year plan, which was a concern that some had. And, it has changed the conversation about what it means to add more choices into the system in urban areas so that people don't have only their car to think about as an option. I think executing those projects in ways that provide people with real benefits is, there's no substitute for showing that the choice gives people, exciting things and ways to get around, right? The success of a service like Pegasus goes a heck of a lot farther than, lecturing people about taking the bus, right? Like nobody wants to be told to take the bus. They want to be given, cool blue vehicles where, it actually sounds much more pleasant than sitting in traffic on I-70. Same thing with the routes on places like I-25. The investments in those mobility hubs that we're building up and down the spine of the Front Range, there's like housing being put in adjacent to those. There's developers working with us on it. And I think turning these ideas into things that people can see and touch, in some ways moves them from the space of abstraction into, more choices in our lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely.